Sent from Disneyland, history in our hand. So much to say about yesterday and the decades we have spanned. Postcards from the park, this journey will embark. See what has changed and what remains on Sent from Disneyland. Sent from Disneyland.
Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this podcast, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland, Disneyland history, and more, with mementos, snapshots, souvenirs, and postcards sent from Disneyland, from 1955 to the present. Let's start by thanking my patrons from patreon.com. You can join in at any level to support the show and receive snail mail from my trips to Disneyland and from my desk, plus some sneak peeks and bonus content. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the rest of the e-ticket patrons, to Nia, Eric Daniels, Monica Seitz Vega, Scott Cagle, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Angela Reynolds, Grace Coate, Patty Wolin, and Ben and Noel Bruning. B-ticket patron Joshua Bell, and to the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Alexis Robles, Angel DeBlock, and the Beyond the Railroad podcast. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has a haunted mansion at night. You can see the streetlights reflecting on the rivers of America, as well as the Tom Sawyer Island rafts and keel boats tied to their docks. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see a crescent moon. On the back it reads, Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion casts an eerie glow across the moonlit rivers of America in New Orleans Square. Inside the mansion, 999 happy ghouls and goblins are dying to meet Disneyland guests. It's not postmarked, but was sent with a 10-cent We Hold These Truths Jefferson Memorial postage stamp, Scott number 1510. Let's assume they visited the park 50 years ago today, Saturday, February 1st, 1975, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. The weather was a high of 61 and a low of 38. It's addressed to Paula Jensen of Proctor, Minnesota. It reads, Paul, I'm on my way home. We'll stop and pick up Don. Spend a night in Colorado. Be home this weekend. Recently, I received a new record player, and my wife and I have been cataloging our record collection. One record I picked up while traveling is the chilling, thrilling sounds of The Haunted House. The recording was produced by Walt Disney Productions under the Disneyland Record label in 1964. This was a year after the Haunted Mansion's facade was built, but still 5 years before the opening of the attraction. Looking back at the 1958 guidebook, the Haunted Mansion concept art was included to show it as a coming attraction, and is listed as Haunted House. The cover of this record is of a graveyard at night leading to a large, dark estate. The design of the building has stark architectural elements and bears little resemblance to Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, although the artwork was done by Paul Wenzel, who did some concept art for the Haunted Mansion. On one of the headstones it reads, Here lies a most terrific collection of recorded sounds. The back cover has a letterbox version of the same image and a description of what is included on the record. It reads, The sound effects department of the Walt Disney Studio has been collecting all kinds of noises since 1927, the first sound film which Walt Disney made and the first sound cartoon made by anyone, with Steamboat Willie, starring a little mouse named Mickey. This picture, like every other one Walt Disney has made, whether short subject or featured animated cartoon, or live action, contained many sound effects. Drawing upon this enormous library of sound, Disneyland Records has produced this LP. Side 1 contains 10 stories in sound, in which the narrator sets up the situation and the sound effects take over and tell the story. Side 2 is a collection of sound effects, grouped by category. These may be used to create your own stories in sound. We know you will enjoy the adventures in sound as they are recorded on this LP, but you may have even greater enjoyment in creating sound stories of your own using the sound effects on this LP, plus others you may do yourself. The Disneyland catalog of children's records is one of the finest in the world. The primary audience for children's records is the age group 3 to 8 years. Most of the records in the Disneyland catalog are made specifically for that group, although there are some others whose appeal reaches into the early teens. This particular Disneyland record, Chilling Thrilling Sounds of the Haunted House, is not intended for young, impressionable children from 3 to 8. It is intended for older children, teenagers, and adults. Listening to the record, I could hear some sounds which were likely used in the Haunted Mansion and in various Disney films and shorts. The first side has narration by Laura Olsher, preceding the spooky sound effect tracks. The second side is just sounds with no narration. It is unclear if this was meant to be a tie-in with a future Disneyland attraction or just a fun record. Add some flair to your mail by checking out stamps at Enfield Post. You can explore different stamp options on our Etsy site, grab some great deals by following EP Sunday Sales on Instagram, or create something special and have her design a stamp array for your invitation or celebration. You can head over to enfieldpost.com and explore all the different vintage postage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST on Instagram and enfieldpost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has the streets of New Orleans Square. You can see the Crystal Shop and the Perfumery, as well as the Court of Angels archway. On the back it reads, New Orleans Square Street. All the flavor and excitement of the Crescent City is captured in Disneyland's New Orleans Square, with its quaint shops, iron lace balconies, and winding streets. It's postmarked May 4th, 1973, with an Anaheim cancel and a 9-cent red U.S. Airmail Delta Wing plain postage stamp, Scott number C77. I assume they visited the park on Wednesday, May 2nd, 1973, when park hours were from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The weather was a high of 84 and a low of 48. It's addressed to Mr. and Mrs. J. Frontroth of Parma, Ohio. It reads, 5273. Hi. Yesterday we saw San Diego. I've never seen so many flowers. Everything is in bloom everywhere. We left some clothes in Yuma and had to drive back to get them, or we would have seen the zoo. Today we spent 7 hours at Disneyland. We think it's much better than Cedar Point. Weather is perfect. We'll be seeing Barb tonight. Friday we will start for San Francisco. Love, Carol and Greg. Another record in my collection is from the other famous New Orleans Square attraction, titled Walt Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean, the soundtrack of the fabulous Disneyland Adventure. This LP was released by Disneyland Records in 1968, a year after the attraction opened at the park. The cover includes a burning town with shadows of 3 pirates and a painting of a pirate with a cutlass and pistol ready to ransack the town. Inside the front cover there are 12 pages of full-color photographs from the ride, plus some line drawings of pirates participating in various activities. The back cover of the record has the track listings as well as a brief description of the record, with a line drawing of pirates readying a cannon from the top deck of a ship. Side 1 of the record has a descriptive narration by Thurl Ravenscroft of the Disneyland attraction, followed by the iconic song, Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. The second side is filled with old pirate songs and sea shanties. The record is a fun way to experience the attraction at home. It's interesting to follow along, to hear what has changed over the years, and some things that are left out of the vivid recording. Overall, these are 2 great records I love having in my collection. My incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is a craft hour on Instagram, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern or 6 Pacific. Art Throwdown is a wonderful community of artists who love to share their craft, from creating sticker postcards and coloring techniques to intricate paper cutting and unique crafting. It's always a treat to watch a show and occasionally get some one-of-a-kind postcards from the group. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard has a vintage black and white image of a seashore in Madrid. It's postmarked January 28th, 2025, with a San Diego cancel and 4 postage stamps, a 10-cent purple Universal Postal Air Mail postage stamp, a 10-cent International Women's Year postage stamp, a 4-cent Wheels of Freedom postage stamp, and the 32-cent Snow White postage stamp, Scott numbers C42, 1571, 1162, and 3185C, respectively. It reads, January 27th, 2025. Hello, Clocky. Greetings from sunny San Diego. I've lived here 18 years and have lots of tales about Disney visits, but my fascination is with getting to see the insides of the rides when they break down and you have to leave, when they flip on the lights and you see how shabby and unmagical it looks in the light of day. Really pretty awesome, and a tribute to show how well they do the magic under normal circumstances. Wishing you lots of interesting adventures, Suji. Thank you so much for the postcard, Sue, and the great stamps. It took me a bit of time to go through my Scott catalog to find all 4 stamps, but always great to go through and see all the different types of stamps there have been. I find it very special when I'm on an attraction and it breaks down. On top of seeing a little behind the magic, the safety and security protocols are also interesting. From the little evacuation I did on It's a Small World a few years ago to a large evacuation from California Screamin' before it was Incredicoaster, it's fun to see a park from a different point of view. Your postcard was also special this week because it's from you, as I listened to the Postcardist podcast faithfully, and you were on promoting Postcrossing 4 years ago. As of today, you're the 3rd most prolific sender from the US and the 2nd longest sender by distance, although this card didn't add much to your grand total. As Frank always says, postcards connect people, and I'm happy that this card is our little connection to make the world a little smaller. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment on whatever podcast platform you use. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/sentfromdisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at sentfromdisneyland or my website, sentfromdisneyland.com. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent from Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney-related properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to the host and guests of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. This podcast is produced and edited by Clocky McDowell, website designed by Misty McDowell, theme song was written and performed by Noah Sunday Lefkowitz. Take it away, Noah.